West Bengal, he rose to who's who of United States, where he interacted with all the Nobel laureates, the administratives of United States. One fine day, there was a big turning point in Dr. Manilal Bhaumik's life, where we call that one moment or an accidental moment that turned him completely inwards, and he became a very regular and a very serious meditator, and he started approaching the problem of consciousness from both experiential perspective and also from his academic venture from the quantum physics perspective. Today, we are very much happy and very much humbled to Dr. Manilal Bhaumik that he has accepted our invitation, and he will be addressing us on a very important topic: does quantum physics support Indian concept of neuroscience in healing? For this keynote, we have with us today our two colleagues, Dr. Sri Kumar and Dr. Vijay Lakshmi from Department of Neurophysiology to chair this keynote. Dr. Sri Kumar is Associate Professor in our department over here. He completed his PhD in the same department over here, and he had a postdoctoral training at Utah School of Medicine and CNRS University of Brugge in France, and has a special interest in work with neurosteroids, addiction neuroscience, and exercise physiology. And his work has been recognized with many honors, like B.K. Anand Prize for his best research paper, BMS Excellence Award, and Somani Oration Award in the Indian Academy of Neuroscience. So I welcome Dr. Sri Kumar for this keynote. So we have Dr. Vijay Lakshmi also with us. She is also Associate Professor in the Department of Neurophysiology, and she is expert in stem cell research. Her work in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is one of the debilitating condition in the neurology of trying to understand the molecular mechanism, has been recognized throughout the world. And the technique that she has developed has been today the talk of the day around the world in the ALS research. And for her work also, she has been bestowed with B.K. Anand Oration Award. So now I give this keynote for the chairpersons to take it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Ravindra, for the kind introduction. And on behalf of Dr. Vijay Lakshmi also, I thank Dr. Bindukuti and Dr. Ravindra for this opportunity to chair this session. So the ever enigmatic concept of consciousness. So I think first and foremost, the Center for Consciousness itself is a great effort in trying to understand and do research in this area of consciousness. And in the same line, I think the current, whatever you're enjoying for the last 3 days now, the webinar, the concepts of consciousness, bringing in both the neuroscience and the Indian philosophical perspectives, that itself is a great initiative. And we thank the organizers from the Center for Consciousness Studies for this opportunity to be here. And it also gives me great pleasure to introduce and invite Dr. Manilal Bhaumik to deliver this keynote lecture. As Dr. Ravindra already introduced Dr. Manilal Bhaumik, and for many of you probably he does not need an introduction, but nevertheless, I will just briefly tell about him. So first and foremost, he is an eminent scientist who has played a key role in developing the laser technology that has paved way for the using of laser in medical applications like plastic and other dermatological applications. And for his phenomenal contribution, he has been bestowed with the prestigious Padma Shri Award from the Government of India in the year 2011. Now, what is interesting is, coming from core physics, he has switched gears in the later part of his life. And although the current interest includes innovative theoretical physics, that is research in deciphering the century-old enigma of quantum physics, as well as sharing with the public the advances in quantum physics and cosmology, and also their applications for our lives and work, and importantly, in the context of today's webinar, spiritual development to understand consciousness. He has several works to his credit, apart from the numerous publications in international journals. He has authored several books. For example, Code Name God, The Cosmic Detective, Vishwajibani, Biography of the Universe, Brahma Satya Jagat Satya. So there are many such books from Dr. Bhaumik. And he is also the creator of the award-winning animated TV series Cosmic Quantum Ray. And he has several honors. As we already told, he has had the Padma Shri from the Government of India. In addition, what is interesting is that the University of California at Los Angeles has established the Mani L. Bhaumik Institute for Theoretical Physics in 2016. So it's really a great honor to have him here and to deliver the keynote address today. And I request Dr. Manilal Bhaumik to deliver the keynote address with the title is, Does Quantum Physics Support the Indian Concept of Neuroscience in Healing? Over to Dr. Manilal Bhaumik.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for giving me a chance to talk to you about a subject that is very dear to me. And the subject is how to integrate Indian philosophical concept with neuroscientific healing. I'd like to present to you my thoughts from personal experience, that an endeavor of integrating these thoughts is really timely and very helpful. The basic concepts of Indian philosophical heritage can be summarized in 3 slokas. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahma. Tattvam Osi, so are you. Sarvang Khalidang Brahma. Everything in this universe exists inseparably intertwined with the universal source that is Brahma. I think that we, as a result, also inseparably intertwined with that universal source all the time, and we have to live our life. We'll have to live and in tune with that reality that we are inseparably intertwined with the universal source. If we veer off, the result would be dis-ease, that is disease, mental disease. Modern scientific reports says that almost 70% of mental or chronic illnesses have a mental origin. This can be cured mainly by following this concept that we are all intertwined with the universal source, and our mind is a mirror of it. And so using our mind, we can heal, and this is something that is really getting acceptance throughout the world with the practice of yoga and meditation. And I have intense personal experience in that matter, and I'd like to tell you, with your indulgence, a little bit of that. I was born in a mud hut, in a thatched roof hut in an obscure village in colonial India, where life has stood still for almost 3,000 years. It was the same lifestyle almost as people did about 3,000 years ago. Superstition, blind faith, fear ruled the day, not to speak of hunger and poverty and disease, of course. That was the beginning of my life, and with extreme determination and hard work, I managed to escape that black hole of poverty, achieved a life that was shown in the popular TV series Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So in a way, I have lived 3,000 years of life in one lifetime, 3,000 years of evolution of human thoughts in one lifetime. And you can imagine how much of a mental scar it left in me, having to cope with one after the other, a series of them. I must say that what has helped me to become a functioning, normal individual in a global technological society today is my effort to heal that wound through meditative and mental meditative practices and mental strength. And I had the opportunity of seeing that in well-known people in my life, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that to give you that it does really work. My first encounter was as an impressionable teenager. I had an opportunity to live with Mahatma Gandhi when he came to camp near our village for 7 days, and I was lucky to be a volunteer in that camp and watched every move he made throughout the day, and gave me a first perspective of the power of mind and healing. He actually had high blood pressure, but it never took any medicine for it. He kept it under control through mental power and lived a very enduring, agile life until his very old age. And that was because of his living in tune with the source. And it doesn't come easy, of course, and he practiced every day. Our daily routine started at 4 a.m. in the morning with a group meeting, group prayer actually, and then of course he studied the scriptures and to remind himself about that there is a universal source and we have to be in tune with that. And in practice, he actually would spend in full focus on spinning on the spinning wheel for an hour, and that was kind of a almost, when you see him, you could see that he's almost in a meditative practice. One of the things that I remember him saying, that the real wealth that you have is your health, and he actually lived all his life following that advice to himself. The next individual that I came across was an extraordinary man, Norman Cousins. He was a famous editor for about 30 years with a Saturday Evening Post of New York. He happened to have some a disease, incurable disease of the collagen deficiency, and the doctors gave him few months to live. He said, well, no doctors have the right to pronounce a death sentence on me. I'm going to cure myself. And in fact, lo and behold, he did cure himself using the power of his mind alone. He was so impressed with it that he took up that as a mission in his life to cure people using their power of mind. And eventually, strangely enough, without having any medical degree or any actual procedure that all the medical students go through, he was able to get a associate professor at the University of California Med School without having a degree. That has never happened before, but the dean was so impressed with his zeal and with his practice, that how he has really cured people with the power of mind. He was appointed as a faculty, and he held the job for about 10 years, cured many incurable diseases in people that has been given up, and I know some of them. I've been to some of his meetings. He almost as an evangelical zeal used his method that he preached, and he actually wrote a book called Anatomy of an Illness, documenting all the cases that he has successfully cured just using the power of mind. And that was made into a popular television series. You can read his various books on the subject, including The Anatomy of Illness. Also, my experience that I have been talking about here is long, and what is the basis of that healing is something that I have read in a more extensive way in my book, Codename God, where you can read how mind can heal, what is the scientific basis of that. Also, I'd like to mention one more person that I was very impressed with, developed a good friendship with him, is Professor Richard Davidson of University of Wisconsin. He actually used MRI and PET scan and other devices to record the changes in the brain that takes place on some Tibetan monks that Dalai Lama supplied to him, and they were very expert in practitioner of the power of mind, and in terms of through meditation and yoga. And in fact, he recorded that when one gets in tune with the universal source, the brain images, the MRI images actually changes, and the whole brain become in coherence. There's a coherent signal that encompasses the entire brain, while if you are not in tune, it is incoherent, and the various parts of brains are incoherent. And so he utilized that practice of meditation, showing that neuroplasticity, that means changing your own brain by your own thoughts, actually do take place, and diseases can be cured. So again, to summarize, that there's ample evidence that mind can heal, and this is gaining quite a bit of acceptance throughout the world. In fact, at UCLA, where I do have the institute, as well as I am still a researcher on quantum physics, there's a Norman Cousins Center for Psychoneuroimmunology, where they are following Norman's method of curing people through meditation. And this is quite a large program supported by the NIH or one of its subsidiary. So there is plenty of evidence to really document that mind can heal. And but today we live in a scientific age. Every moment of our life is actually affected by science. So especially for younger people, they like to know that what we're talking about is not just experiential, that it has a scientific background to it. And I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about my studies and my investigation, how scientifically, for the first time in human history, we can actually support these experiential findings. In high school, most of you have learned that everything is made of atoms. And of course, atoms are made of elementary particles like electrons and proton, which is again made of quarks and gluons. But the point is that the electrons, which are the first member of material creation, is actually has a peculiar property that has puzzled many scientists over the years. Namely, why is it that an electron have exactly the same property, its mass, charge, spin, etc., no matter where in the world or where in the universe or when it is created? Isn't that puzzling? That is an observational fact. You can create the electrons in, let's say, at Stanford Linear Accelerator or the Brookhaven National Laboratory or the new big particle accelerator, Large Hadron Collider, or LHC in short, in Geneva. The electrons created have exactly the same property as it is when the electrons are also created in astrophysical processes in jets, as well as the very beginning of the universe after the Big Bang. And in fact, most of the electrons that we have today are left over from the Big Bang, although we can create them now today after 14 billion years. And lo and behold, they haven't changed at all. How could that be? They have the exact same property, whether at the beginning of the universe or today or anywhere else in the universe. Well, this was really a big puzzle for the scientists. How it was solved is that we have proof that electrons are not really fundamental. They are quantum of excitation of energy from an underlying field we call quantum fields, and it is totally abstract and permeates everything, and it is present everywhere in this universe. There's not a single space-time element where it doesn't exist, yet we're not aware of it. To give you some example of it, or idea of it actually, is the field of gravity that we generally experience in our daily life even without thinking about it. There is a field of gravity that keeps us pinned down in our seats or to this world, to this earth, and we go about daily life, not even think about it, and yet it permeates everything and is still there. So that is the general idea of a field. Now, of course, these fields have a source, and Earth is the source of the field, that gravitational field that we experience, and it is also stable. Every point has a particular value of that field. But the quantum fields are the one from which these classical fields that we experience comes from. And those quantum fields do not have a source, it's its own source. And it is the fundamental reality of the universe. And it is everywhere the same, where there is humans or nothing else. Still, the quantum fields are everywhere. And just like a fish never knows anything but water, and also probably does not feel. And fortunately, we do not feel the quantum fields, because unlike the classical fields, the quantum fields are always very active, alive, with incessant activity. And if we are not spared from perceiving it, we will have probably vertigo. So it's a good thing that we have been spared from experiencing it. But you can do experiment, and we have built large accelerator like the LHC to show that the quantum fields actually are everywhere, where you are, where you're not, where there is nothing, even empty space, even at absolute zero temperature, the quantum fields and their activity will be there. So here is a list of characteristics that I have, that at least the properties of the quantum fields, that it pervades every space and time, all the space, and that it is also always active. It is not exactly having the same value as we have in the classical field. And there is something very interesting about this activity of the quantum field, which really I'd like to present to you because it's fascinating. The electron fields, like the other fields, there are about 24 of them that we have discovered so far, and actually they all are predicted and detected, verify this whole concept of the quantum fields being the primary reality, and so much so that all these 24 particles can be put in a like a periodic table, what we call the Standard Model. And all of these fields are actually always active, always alive, in a very special way. How? Let's take the electron, for example, or for that matter, any other particle. What do we see is that these fields are never quiet. They're always active, but this activity has a very special property. They're innately spontaneous. Nobody is spurring them on. It's innately spontaneous and completely unpredictable exactly when that particular event is going to take place. And this is only a slow motion description of the activity. What actually is happening is that there's up to infinite number of these activity, and the member of the ensemble having infinitely different amplitude and corresponding lifetime. Also at the same time, all the other fields, the 24 other fields, carrying out exactly the same activity locally at any particular space-time element. And lo and behold, this activity actually is taking place throughout the entire universe, everywhere from the infinitesimal to the infinite. There is everywhere this type of spontaneous, unpredictable activity is going on incessantly, and making the universe look like an extremely busy place at some fundamentally smaller dimensions, so much so that it'll give you vertigo if you are able to actually experience it, and it becomes more and more energetic as you go towards the fabric of space. And so the question is, in spite of this incessant activity, or spontaneous activity with a totally unpredictable nature up to infinite dynamism, how the source has remained exactly the same since the beginning of time through today. It has exactly remained the same, immutable. We call it immutable source. How could it be? Think about it. How could it be that is fluctuating wildly with spontaneous and totally unpredictable, incessant activity all the time, and yet remains exactly the same? So there ought to be some kind of self-referral that it brings, that it knows where it belongs. But at distances below 10 to the power minus 16 centimeter, there is no material manifestation, only fields, abstract but physical fields. So how the field can have self-referral? Do we know anything in our experience that you can compare with? Well, the only thing we can think of is our own self-awareness. It is capable of spontaneous activity and also unpredictable, and yet we know who we are, at least at this point of our development in evolution. That's the only thing we can think of. And in fact, many quantum physicists have felt it, but did not quite had all the knowledge at the time, or did not have more details of it. For example, the father of quantum physics, Max Planck, declared that I believe consciousness is primary and matter is a derivative of consciousness. And the quantum pioneer Edwin Schrödinger, said a similar thing. He said that, paraphrasing the Indian philosophical thoughts, that aham brahmasmi, I am that, tattvam you are that. And he said, what could be any simpler? And same kind of intuition or feeling has been expressed by others, like Freeman Dyson, who is one of the most famous scientists that just passed away recently, and David Bohm. Both of them said that elementary particles like electron has a rudimentary awareness, which is similar to, which gives rise to our consciousness. So this has been intuited by scientists before, but now with the status of development in quantum field theory, we can say without hesitance that for a field while actually being alive with activity, with incessant activity, that is totally spontaneous and completely unpredictable, with up to infinite dynamism, and yet remains the same. So there has to be a self-referral similar to our our own self-realization, or other similar to our own self-awareness. So in that sense, I must say that universe is self-aware, and very likely our awareness derives from that. And in fact, we now do have a viable theory proposed by Roger Penrose, who received the Nobel Prize in Physics last year and is a good friend of mine as well. And along with the anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, they have come up with a model that seems viable, that any stimulus that we have produces a signal in our brain, and they all get into a coherence, global coherence in the brain. In our brain, different signals are coming. Our eyes are sending signal, our ears are sending signals, and so all of these signals are producing different excitation of the quantum system in our brain. As a result, since we do not see them differently, we see always all together in conjunction. So there must be a global quantum coherence, and this coherence actually is produced by the entanglement of the various signals, and their primary source is what we call the microtubules inside the cellular skeleton. Every cell, no matter where, has these microtubules as their structural element. And the microtubules have been shown to be able to sustain quantum coherence, which is very delicate, but they can sustain quantum coherence for a longer time. So when a global quantum coherence builds up, up to a certain point, this coherence, coherent wave function is what we call reduced or collapses, and we get a moment of proto-consciousness, meaning which in conjunction with the universal consciousness, we get a moment of consciousness. And you can, like a movie where you're projecting individual frames, just like the video you're seeing right now, individual frames are being projected in sequence, and yet it doesn't give you a individual perception. It gives a continuous perception of so if the events are happening, if the frames are being projected with say 50 frames per second or thereabouts, then you do not see a discontinuous image. You see, our brain is able to see that as a continuous experience. And so this is where we see that the mind is actually making an image of everything that is going on around us through a global coherence which is in tune with the universal source, and a reduction of that quantum coherence gives us a moment of consciousness, and it goes on. So bottom line is that that we are actually, in every aspect in our living, is is inseparably intertwined with the existence of a universal source that is everywhere in this unbelievably large universe, and also it has been immutable in spite of its incessant liveliness. So it is so much more powerful than we individually are, that we have to live in tune with that source. Otherwise, as we said, we'll have disease that is disease. And this is something that has been pronounced by religious traditions, and now science is verifying it. So we must live in tune with the source. Thank you so much.
If the participants have any questions, they can just put it in the chat box, and we will forward that to the keynote speaker. So now I request Dr. Shri and Dr. Vijay to share their views.
Yeah, so while I was listening to this, so what struck me is, for some reason in the morning today, I was reminded of this Aham Brahmasmi. Okay. So I think what he's trying to say here is that, so we are in sync with the universe, and when we realize that Aham Brahmasmi, I think, and also I think from the philosophical perspective, so they say that, so in line with the same thing, Aham Brahmasmi, Anando Brahmeti Vijanati. So there is one more term which says that Ananda is Brahma. Okay, so I think all of these are attempts to understand consciousness and to understand who we are. Over to Dr. Vijay.
Thank you, sir, and thanks for that enlightening talk, where he began with the tremendous power of mind, which, when it is tuned with the universal source, and how we can cure any incurable disease. So he spoke about the quantum, global quantum coherence, taking at the cellular structure of microtubules, how that even electrons can play a crucial role in consciousness. And there is a lot for us to explore and learn, and because if we can think about consciousness at the cellular level, then there is much, much more for us to learn and explore. Thank you.
So we take this opportunity to thank Dr. Bhaumik, to be able to come and deliver this keynote address. And I think with this, we will end the session on the keynote address. Over to Dr. Ravindra.
So we had a wonderful keynote today, and maybe in another 10 minutes of time, we'll be starting our the first session of the day on meditation, neuroscience, and consciousness. So we have very highly acclaimed speakers lining up in this particular session. So we'll log in back in another 10 minutes of time. Thank you very much.